Hello guys. 여러분, 제가 다시 오랜만에 돌아왔습니다. 오늘은 엄청 이쁜 친구를 보여드릴 거예요. 솜이에요. 우리 귀염둥이 솜솜이를 많이 사랑해줄 거죠? 솜솜이를 생각해서 네, 빠져나가면 바로 시작할게요. 네, 오늘 책은 어째가 없어요라는 이런 책이고요. 네, 스파이더맨 책입니다. 재밌게 읽어주셨으면 합니다. Featuring your favorite Spider-Man, Kid from Queens, Spider-Man the Crush, Gwen Stacy, Peter Parker, Gwen Stacy, Captain Stacy, Daredevil, Nova, Cap Shield, Vibranium, Peter's aunt, who loves to bake, Aunt May, world famous making cookies, the joke Flash, the joke's weapon of choice, crumpled paper, Thing, Iron Man, our rubber ducky Quack, and the creepy spider. 너무 마음에 들고요. The story of Spider-Man. Peter Parker was just an average kid who loved science. While attending a presentation about radiation, he was bitten by a radioactive spider. This spider gave Peter amazing abilities. He could cling to walls like a spider and sense danger. Peter uses his scientific knowledge to create sticky fluid and washes. With this, he could spin webs and swing from skyscraper to skyscraper high above the streets of New York City. He created a costume and called himself Spider-Man. One night, Peter's beloved Uncle Ben was killed by a burglar. Spider-Man could have stopped it earlier that night, but had decided not to. Peter was devastated, but he remembered something Uncle Ben had always told him. With great power comes great responsibility. He would never again pass up an opportunity to help. From that day on, Peter used his power to fight for justice and defend the public. Stop it. Everything from petty thieves to spare villains. Peter has had countless amazing adventures since becoming Spider-Man. This is just one of them. Chapter 1. Don't look up. Don't look up. Don't look up. Peter Parker mumbled. He squinted and tried to wheel away what was coming toward him. Hey, Bookworm! Flash Thompson called out from the other end of the hall. Peter looked up from his locker. Flash and Midtown High caught the bag and was always followed by a group of other jocks and adoring cheerleaders. Think fast, Flash said as he tossed a balled up piece of loose leaf paper at Peter. He bounced off his forehead and into his locker. Real funny, Angel Eugene, Peter said. He never called Fresh by his nickname because he knew the joke had his real name. Maybe if you use paper for something other than throwing, you'd actually graduate high school before you or sunny decisions, Peter quit. And maybe if you spent less time studying and more time on lesson, you'd have better luck with the ladies. And maybe if you spend less time studying and more time relaxing, you'd have a better luck with the ladies, Fresh said, motioning to the giggling cheerleader several lockers away. Look, like there's something you think you have because it's sure you've got, Peter Shepard. Fresh waved his hand in the air to dismiss Peter, but Peter could tell by the look in Flash and eye that his comment and thought. Come on, crew, let's not waste any more time with this loser, Flash said. Then he and his fan club headed down the hall. Peter picked up the crumpled paper from the fluffy slug. Even though he wasn't surprised at what he saw there, he had to admit that it still bothered him. He tossed the paper into the recycling bin. Flash shot a look back at Peter over his shoulder. By his smile, Peter could tell that Flash had seen him open the paper and throw it away. And the worst part was that Flash seemed to be enjoying every second of it. If Peter thought he stuck it to Flash people with his comment about Flash need for luck, it was Flash who had the last laugh. As usual, Flash and Peter went their separate ways. Flash to the schoolyard and Peter to the school library. Maybe Flash was right. Maybe Peter did spend too much time studying and not enough having fun. After all, it was lunchtime, and the rest of his class was outside, enjoying the people for weather. He was holed up in the stuffy school library, preparing for the next week's science test. And he was the only one in there. Well, almost the only one. Hey, Pete, Gwen Stacy said. Shh, the school librarian scolded. I thought I was the only one who spent my lunchtime studying, she whispered. Even a girl as smart as you has to be wrong sometimes, Peter said, and he thought he saw Gwen brush a riddle. Well, I couldn't ask for better company, she replied. Then it was Peter's turn to squirm uncomfortably. He set his books down next to her and took a seat. If Flash could see him now, for once Peter was happy to be a bit of an outside. In this case, mean he got to spend time alone with Gwen Stacy. There was no way any other kid in his class would be joining them. Who else would pass of the beautiful weather for the study season? Then the library door creaked open, and Peter couldn't believe what he saw. Flash was on his way in. What could he be doing in a library? Smiling, he slowly walked over to where Peter and Gwen were sitting. "Hey, Virgo, I noticed you dropped this," Flash said, and handed Peter the drawing he'd thrown out just a few minutes earlier. There it was in plain sight, and Gwen was staring at it too. What would she think? Would she find it funny? Would she laugh at him? Peter ripped the paper off the table and grabbed his books. I've got to go, he said, and pushed the chair back. Maybe a little toy. Shh, the librarian said again. But I was just doing my good deed for the day, Flash said, sarcastically. You wouldn't know a good deed if in it you like a ton of bricks, Peter replied, amazingly, a ton of bricks falling onto Flash. How would you know about a ton of anything? You're such a weakling, you couldn't even lift a pound, Flash said. Peter stormed out of the room and slammed the door behind him. Shh! The librarian said so loudly that Peter couldn't hear him through the closed door. Peter was shaking. He was hot. He was embarrassed. But most of all, he was angry. Chapter 2. Peter spent the rest of the day distracted and chemistry let his teacher notice that he was not quite himself. Can anyone tell me the symbol for gold on the periodic table of elements? The teacher asked. When no one could answer, he turned to Peter, hoping his star student would know. Peter? He asked. Oh, Peter said. Sorry, what were you asking? His teacher looked deflated. The symbol for God on the periodic table, the teacher repeated. Jack? Peter answered. Ayu, it's the symbol for God, the teacher said with disappointment. And Peter was disappointed too. He didn't like anyone getting the better of him, and Flash was certainly doing just that. He had him so down that Peter couldn't even concentrate in his favorite class. He couldn't even remember the most obvious answers, but he did remember that piece of paper with the drawing and how he felt when Gwen saw it. Peter just wanted that day to end. The bell rang. Suddenly, the end of the school day, Peter made his way to his locker to collect his things. Pete! Someone called from behind him. He turned to see Gwen. Hey, I just wanted to say that I think what's last fever was beaming, she said. Yo, what? I don't let it get to me, Peter replied, trying to smile. It sure doesn't work that way, Gwen said. You're not your upbeat self. Don't let that jerk get to you. You're the one laughing when you won another prize and is still repeating sophomore year. Yeah. Peter tried to imagine it. Sounds, he said, forcing a smile. You're welcome, she said, grinning. Want to go hang out at the Queensboro coffee shop? We can finish off our studying. Pick up where we left off in the library. Peter thought about it. It sure was tempting, but he knew he might not be the best company right now. He was in a really bad mood. After all, and besides, what if Flash busted in on them again? Peter was sure he wouldn't be able to hold back, and he couldn't hit Flash. Peter packed and used unusually powerful punch. Pow! Swoosh! Bang! I wish I could, Peter said, but I promised it. Aunt made that I'd run a few errands before I got home. Gwen looked disappointed, but understood. Peter slid to four things to grab from his locker and put his eyes landing on his gym bag. Then as Gwen walked away, he snatched it and made his way off the school's top floor. Peter looked around to make sure the coast was clear. Then he slipped into a small supply closet that he knew hadn't been used in years. He unzipped his bag and took out his famous red and blue mask, gloves, and boots. He always wore the rest of his costume under his street clothes, just in case he needed a quick change. He put on the rest of his costume and relied on his special power, his fighter sense, to warn him if anyone was around. Confident, Peter sneaked up the stairs to the rooftop and pointed his right at the school's clock tower, and then he shot strings of webs from his web shooters, and faster than anyone could notice, CB swung all over Queens towards the city. Being Spider-Man didn't mean Peter didn't have to deal with the same problems as ordinary teenagers, but they did give him unique ways of blowing with him. One of his favorite ways was using his webbing to swing over them rooftops of New York and through the skyscraper canyons of Fifth Avenue. Spider-Man swung his way to the Queens cable car that ran over the Queensboro Bridge into Manhattan. He shot his webbing at the car and hitched a ride under the cab into the city. The war car would make it to Manhattan in no time. 네, 여기까지였습니다. 아직 챕터 3이 챕터 2가 끝나진 않았지만 네, 다음으로 넘어갈 예정입니다. 지금까지 감사드립니다. 지우였습니다.